Megan with me to the show, my surprise, beautiful, wonderful guest. And Megan is been a mentee of mine for, she was with me for about 3 years, to be honest with you. And then um, she actually started to grow and evolve on her own. And she's been working on some amazing things and doing some amazing things. And one of the topics that came up for me was spiritual addictions and afflictions. And the divine really put Megan in my face. And I'll allow Megan to introduce herself and give her a little bit of experience and background. And then you'll understand why, maybe a little bit more as to why the divine led me to Megan at this time when we're talking about spiritual addictions and afflictions. So, all right, Megan, go for it. Tell us your little bit of your background and where you come from and why God would put you in front of my face when it comes to this topic, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. So I had about 17 years of experience with addictions, and I decided to break away from that with circumstances and experiences that I went through personally, um, and decided to break away from that. I started with affirmations and started with myself. Um,
Hmm.
so, because it all comes from yourself before you can give to anybody else. And
Hmm.
then I just started to go on TikTok and try to find who I am. And
Hmm.
I ran into you and was drawn to you. And I watched, like most everybody else, for about a year. And God just guided me to open myself up to more, to find
Hmm.
Him,
Hmm.
um, through my spirituality.
Nice. So when you come from the background that you come from, intertwining, let's define for just a moment here. I really want to define the word addiction. Okay. So, an addiction is a compulsion, right? Where it takes you outside of yourself to always have to have or always need, right? This belief that you have to have that thing outside of you in order to survive, right? That's the compulsion.
Hmm.
That's the delusion. That's the intrusion of the mind, right? When we're coming from an addiction space. So, I want to define in a sense, just a little bit in vibration, the word of addiction here. Now, coming from those spaces and those places within your background and cultivation and your own experience, when I met you, I don't remember how long it was that you had sober at the time that I had met you, but I knew it was like what, 4 years? I'm not sure. Can you tell me
It
for a second?
it was about, because I'm coming up on 6 years,
Okay, so it was about three
so
years.
yeah, 2 to 3
Okay.
years.
All right.
Hmm.
So you were at that time then you were in what I call a sober patternization. Like there's an acute, right, patternization when it comes to being what we call sober. It was abstinent, right? You're just trying to stay away from. Okay. It's the abstinent effect of just trying to stay away from, out of sight, out of mind, right? Okay. And then you come into this soberization where you have more realizations. Now, when we're talking about that past behavior in a spiritual context, how did that relate for you coming from the background that you came from with the awareness of maybe how you were reflecting with, oh my god, wait a minute, I'm starting these behaviors again, but it's in a very spiritual way. How did you see that start and come about in your own life with that experience of recognizing pattern behaviors that wasn't right for you, whatever that was, where you could see that distortion within yourself of trying to really reach for something again outside of yourself to
Hmm.
make yourself feel okay again. And that's what I want to get into, because that's where you move from the addiction behavior that is cultivated inside of you to then moving it into an affliction, because then you afflicted yourself with the
Hmm.
same type of energy, just in a different way. So how did that come about for you in your 3 years of sobriety, starting to move into this spiritual enlightenment phase too for you?
Well, a lot of it was the awareness of what wasn't mine
Hmm.
and what was. and
Okay.
separating the two, because I was working around several different people and trying to separate those two. In It's a continuous new awareness.
Yeah.
So really separating for me what was and
Hmm.
wasn't mine, and also getting down
Hmm.
to the root causes of that to break that completely down.
So, where did you find soul entanglement or spiritual entanglement that might have become addiction for you in reflection of patternization? Does that make sense when I ask that question to you, dear?
Um, Kind of go a little bit deeper.
Okay, I'll go deeper than that. So, for example, right, something I had to learn in my experience when it came to spiritual addictions. So many people pushed and pushed and pushed about shadow work and that I was the problem. So that was an identity crisis within myself growing up for a very long time, is that I was always the problem. It was always my fault, right? So I was always breaking myself down anyway. So my spiritual addiction became ripping myself apart. So every time that something would happen, it became then a going, okay, it's my fault. Where's my fault? Where's my lane? Where's my accountability? Something's got to be wrong with me. What's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. What's wrong with me? And that became my reverse ego spiritual addiction for a
Mm-hmm.
while, is always peeling myself apart and going, oh, wait a minute. Maybe there's really not anything wrong with me. Maybe the divine is trying to show me something outside of me that once was, or that once was this, or an old paradigm in which I'm not in. So, in a sense, a piece of my addiction became, uh, I don't want to call, I guess I'm going to use the human words of beating myself up, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about that, in that phase, what I was asking is, where did you find within yourself that the soul entanglement between you and another pattern or another energy that entangled that spiritual addiction for you? Where
Well,
was that in your reality? What became your spiritual addiction? Was it always trying to see a synchronicity? Was it always trying to hear from God? Was it always trying to think that you're the problem when maybe God's trying to show you something bigger, the divine, the universe? So where was that for you?
it was outside. It was outside, external for me, and
Mhm.
that was
Mhm.
most of me when growing up. I took
Mhm.
on the outside circumstances, people, places, things, and
Mhm.
internalized it within myself. So mine was a lot of taking in other people's thing, their stuff. But
Okay, so a level of codependency where you always wanted to help, you always thought that that's what you had to do in your
mm-hmm,
reality, that's what you always thought you were
yeah,
supposed to do. And I understand that because a lot of people who come into spirituality who, are told that they're the transmuter and they're the light being and they're the empath and they're the empathic, that they have to absorb the energy. They're
mm-hmm,
going to feel the energy the most. So when you take on that label in that reality, it becomes another spiritual addiction in a sense because it's another patternization of a behavior.
yeah, yep.
Okay. So within that space, what was the conditioning for you that took you into that place, the dependence? Like, describe that feeling, if you don't mind, for you, the dependence outside of you to we're gonna I'm gonna get deeper with this, so just bear with me, okay? All right. Where was the conditioning within yourself that you felt that you were to search outside of yourself for that connection in reflection to the spiritual addiction? How did that feel in your own personal life? What did that look like? Because you can see a patternization of behavior that went with that. So, for example, me personally, I got harbored into ritual pattern, you know what I'm saying? Like
Mm-hmm,
consistency, where I was always in my beginning of my journey, because I had lived in both realms for so long, everything was spiritual to me. So it was very hard for me to see human cycles or circles. Okay. And for me, I had to really and understand myself, why I did the things I did, how I did the things I did, what my thought process was behind contributing to that action. And most of the time, it would come down to a pattern, an unidentified, ununderstood, a non understood vibration within me or
Mhm.
sensation, where I could see a level of conditioning that happened within me that was probably at one point in time outside of me that made me feel like that's the way I had to be. So a lot of people become very rigid in their spiritual identity and what it is that they intertwine in their reality. Like they get into these patterns like, oh, if I don't do this and I don't hit this full moon and I don't do this and I don't do this, then this won't happen to me. So where was that conditioning within you?
Well, I'm trying to find an instance. Um, so I would say it was all around. Mine started when I was. I mean, everything starts when we're younger, but looking back, the patterns that I saw as a child helped me to understand
Hmm.
why I was seeking outside of myself instead of within, because I was always trying to be a
Hmm.
reflection of the people outside of me to be able to be accepted in their eyes.
So it was still the acceptance that you were looking for outside of yourself that became a conditioning of that vibration in spirituality to always feed yourself with something. Like, so the conditioning of always looking for confirmation, or the conditioning of always looking for that you're okay. Like, how did that response play out for you? What did you lean into? What did you hang on to that you soon realized was a part of conditioning that you didn't need to have any longer?
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit on this end.
No. So the conditioning within yourself of the patternization, where you always felt like you had to go outside of yourself to reach for a level of comfort. Where did you see that within your spiritual evolvement over the last years, especially knowing and studying cognitive behavioral therapy? Did it really start in the mind for you because it's what you thought you had to do to be okay? So the only thing then that made you feel okay was, oh, I have to wake up and hear my morning message every morning. Oh, I have to wake up and get my phone every morning. Oh, I have to. That ritualistic behavior becomes an addiction within itself.
Yeah, mine was a lot of the mindset, um, doing things a certain way, which is of course the pattern, but doing things a
Hmm.
certain way made me. I thought at the time made me feel like I was doing something for myself, but really it was for outside of myself. And
Hmm.
going within myself and breaking things down for me helped to break that mindset of, you'd say, lack, um,
Hmm.
to change things up a little bit as far as like I started with affirmations, breaking that mindset of I'm not the words I'm trying to get out.
No,
Uh,
I think it's just breaking the mindset of the patternization of always feeling like you have to feed yourself with that vibration. Like, so your first instinct, you wake up, you grab your phone, you have to hear your morning message, you have to join that group, you have to do that thing. Those
mhm,
things become another spiritual addiction, which then puts labels on us to make us feel like we have to be or do that thing.
yeah,
So when you're breaking the barriers of the dependence, because you become dependent again, just in another different way of vibration. Now, when you're working with the understanding of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and repatternizing things for what you have learned in those ways, what is it that is the most important thing to start and do? Like, for me personally, it was freeing my ass and then my mind would follow. So I had to do the action first, then my mind would follow that action. So there, my mind would retract and then I would then follow that action or that correspondence.
Mine, mine would be kind of the opposite. Mine was more of freeing my
Okay.
mind, then my heart
Hmm.
space, and then I would say solar plexus. So it's kind of that
Yeah.
exact my intuition, because freeing my mind was a
Yeah.
big release for me. Changing that
Hmm.
mindset. Journaling helped.
Yeah.
In the cognitive behavioral, the emotional reasoning and labeling is a big thing for me, because labeling
Hmm.
puts yourself in a box, as you would say, instead of
Hmm.
exploring what what's inside of you instead of outside. So breaking free of that
Hmm.
box.
Hmm. When I came to the understanding of what I was doing within my own self, so you don't even I don't think you even realize what it is that you're doing until you have the understanding of it. And that's sometimes why we get put away in these little spaces by ourselves so we can have these revelations. And when I was in a place of understanding that there are different paradigms, different labels that people actualize themselves in. Because don't get me wrong, I got sucked in for a second because a lot of the time, though, my soul already was irritated or upset by the vibration, but I didn't understand why. But I would still be on the outside lines trying to investigate why, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like, okay, I see the paradigm of star seeds label. I see the paradigm of this label. I see the paradigm of that label. And I was like, what is that outside of me that label is trying to get me to keep me in a box? And after going through not only my trenches, my warfare, my understandings of myself and the experiences that I've had, my soul automatically, well, not my soul, but myself automatically wanted to do what everybody else was doing.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was that groupie aspect,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I had to watch myself for a second because I was like, what? Why am I doing that? That's an old way of being, right? But there was something there for me to see. And what I was seeing is it was the divine telling me this entire time that there is no box. You're everything and everything is you. In that way, though, I could see how my old addictive behavior came back at play because when we don't have any answers, when there's that stillness, that's when people get nervous. That's when people get scared. That's when I have to hear or I need that message or I have to have that thing to feel okay. Part of the disillusion that comes to play when you come into these different dimensional realities of people labeling themselves. It's all part of a distortion. And the distortion is, once again, putting yourself in a box outside of yourself and putting yourself with that one fragment and not looking at all other aspects of understanding yourself. So when we try to, I think I think people from the background of addictions and things becoming spiritually addicting, people yearn for that feeling or that connection that the divine brings. And a lot of people will do anything to get a taste of it, to get a feel of it, to see what's under the hood of it. Um, the other part of that is then that's where you see people grasping at straws rather than ye are gods themselves to be able to work through those places and those spaces and vibrations to come into the understanding for things. So there's a lot of entanglement when people in the spiritual community start to label themselves as one thing, one seed, one paradigm. And the ego is very cunning and baffling and powerful. And you will realize I was too hard on myself. So that was another addiction of
Yep.
mine.
Yes.
Another addiction of mine was being so hard on myself. Um and that goes back to the way that I grew up, not because I had a terrible childhood, but because I was tough. I had to be tough. I had to be tough because I put myself in a position to be tough and think that that's what I had to be based upon my outside environment around me. So then, in that spiritual addiction space, that was a part of my phase that I had to break through for myself. Where did you see that within yourself?
Mine was a lot of the growing up. It was a lot of the um, emotional like emotional coding that I put on myself, but
Okay.
also the people around me. So breaking free of that was huge for me, and that's what led into the addiction space. Um, but being
Mhm.
out of it, I was able to pull myself away from it and to kind of,
Mhm.
I don't want to say compartmentalize, but
Mhm.
to be able to distinguish between what was mine and what wasn't.
When you say what wasn't, do you mean it's not yours because it's a vibration that's being pressed upon your core, or do you mean it's not yours because you're not in that paradigm anymore?
It's a little of both because evolving. So it's a little bit of both for me.
Where did you find, see, this is the distortion connects with the desire.
Hmm.
And so what I mean by that is people will amplify their desires based upon distortion or amplify what is really going on within their vibration because of distortion. Distortion within self breeds a patternization of an ego mindset to get you to perceive something outside of yourself again in reality. So, in the understanding of patternization with the mindset, where do you see the detachment from the self to the behavior that's happening? So, example, it comes down to a belief system and it comes down to a distorted belief system and it comes down to a distortion too within yourself of what you're able to perceive. So when you started to perceive these entanglements of the cycles and the patterns of your behavior, where did it become addicting for you in that process to remove those things? So for me, my thing was being so hard on myself that I cut myself off from a lot of opportunities because of the fact is that I was so hardened for so long. I cut myself off. It was almost like a subconscious addiction that I didn't even know that I was reflecting in. Until I was able to perceive myself outside of myself and look at that place and go, wait a minute, I actually am putting myself in harder pathways because I'm being harder on myself or having a harder expectation on myself. Like expectation became
Hmm.
for me.
Yes.
It became another sensation, like almost like a superstition. Like, like, oh, if a black cat crosses my path, I'm gonna have a bad day. It's a belief system that causes your distortion to believe something that's not true about yourself or about you, and the way that these energies play upon the mind in a very spiritually attackful way is concerning in the spiritual paradigm of people having to learn what they're paying attention to, what they're entangling themselves with. And it's a part of the matrix too. So when I saw the paradigms of, I guess, the different spiritual dimensions playing out, you had like your quantum healers, you had interstellar beings, you had, you know, the light workers paradigm, the Palladian paradigm, those all those paradigms, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could see people getting addicted to those spaces because of the vibration from outside in cultivation. Whereas if people would realize how to connect to themselves and everything around themselves and reflect in stillness, in being, they would be able to perceive something within themselves that reflects outside of
Mm-hmm.
themselves. So there's a lot of places and spaces that people can get caught up in spiritual addictions. Now, I want to talk about a sensitive subject and, we'll see what happens. But I'm being asked to bring it up, so I'm going to bring it up. So there's a lot of people in the spiritual community that use plant medicine, and there's nothing wrong with plant medicine when it's used in accordance to the intention behind it. It's sacred. So plant medicine is very sacred. Um, the way you use it and the intention behind it. And I think there's a big issue in the spiritual community with addiction and the plant medicine vibration to connect into a higher state of consciousness to receive. So we're going to cross some wires here and we're going to walk on the fringe now, okay, for a minute. So the distortion there in that aspect is a belief that you need that plant medicine in order to connect, or you have to feel, or you have to be in a certain vibration. So there is nothing wrong with plant medicine, but the intention and the abuse behind it. If you're using it to disassociate or to not restore balance to your vibration, that's where I see a distorted complex coming in. Plant medicine is used, yes, to connect, is used to maybe ease the energy of the process in which you're going through emotionally, mentally. It reminds me of Edward Bach. And for a lot of people don't know Edward Bach was a really genius of a man who used plant medicine in a way where he took the flowers and the plants and emotionally coated them into water and made a mother concoction. And then those concoctions that he made actually worked with the emotional programming. And so when you use the plant medicine in a vibration to meditate or to reflect upon your personal being, personal body, it's very different than people doing the thing in a continuous vibration to have to feel the connection. Does that make sense what I'm
Yep.
saying?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so on a deeper level, I have seen now where people have misunderstood in a very spiritual dynamic way the use of plant medicine and what it's intentionalized for today, because I see many of people that have the imprint of the addiction imprint, right? In one form of fashion. I
Yes.
mean, there's so many different types. It's anything to distort yourself outside of yourself to give you some type of comfort to make you feel
Mm-hmm.
better rather than really face what it is that's going on inside of your place, right? Inside of
Yep.
your home. And
Yes.
so if you use these things in a very spiritual way, in a very integrative way, in a very way which is used to open you up to not yourself. Because when you connect yourself to plant medicine, it's in a vibration where you are connecting self. You are introspecting. This is why the natives would do what they did and have ceremony,
Mhm.
is because it was connecting them to places and spaces within inside of themselves to have the deepest revelation, not only about their generation, but their connection to all things. And so, if we take that from a very sacred place, I've seen the distortion happen once again in a very spiritual, addictive way. Have you seen that play out as well for yourself in just what you're observing?
Yes, I I'm surrounded by it, but like you said, addictions are many things. It's not just there's food, there's um, of course, yeah, the emotional.
The
Uh huh.
comfort,
It's all
right?
it's all just comfort. Um, I've noticed around me that there's just such a variety from an inside point of view to the outside. So you can see the emotional, especially emotional addiction to a um, certain thing, whether it's outside of yourself or if it's um, trying to think of an example of an emotional part of it. Um,
Well, I mean, I got addicted to emotionally constantly trying to feel a vibration that necessarily achievable in this dimensional reality. Not because it doesn't exist, but because of the fact is that it's unattainable just yet. So, what I mean by that is that emotionally, I think too, we can come to always wanting to connect to something more, connect to something higher, connect to something,
mhm,
something, right?
right.
Right? It's like the levels, right? So from ancestors, guides, spirit, to then archangel, to then interstellar, to then the divine Sophia and Father, and then the universal layer, right?
Mhm,
And so, like, connecting to yourself and connecting your Stargate systems within yourself to connect to those layers, it became an emotional desire for me where I was always trying to reach for higher.
yeah.
But I had to realize that that was also me trying to understand parts of me and putting expectation on myself, which became another representation for me as a spiritual addiction because it became a
Yeah.
patternization
Mhm.
and
Yes.
it became me always trying to reach for a higher vibration, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but for where it was coming from in my intention, it was not of pureness. Does that make sense? Because it was
Yeah.
built on expectation and it was built on having to do that.
Yeah.
And at one point in time, literally the divine itself in energetic form came to me and was like, when's enough enough? Like, when is enough enough?
It's a
It's
big
a part of
reach.
me, it's a part of my personality, it's a part of my energy, right? In what my makeup is passion and perseverance and you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so the divine literally was like, when do you see that enough is enough in your reality? When do you see that you've already created everything that I've asked for you to create? When is enough and enough? So that in a sense that always
Right
reaching
back.
for more
Mhm.
was another part of that patternization within myself where the divine's like, sit in it, enjoy it, love it, eat it. But
Yep.
but because of just my makeup, there was another layer that I saw. Anything that is distorted that becomes a pattern, whether emotionally, mentally, or physically, can become another quote unquote addictive layer in behavior.
Mhm.
So there's people out there that can only meditate when they get high. There's people that can only connect to the divine source energy when they're under the influence of something. That's not the true influence of the
Nope.
divine then. You're
Nope.
mistaken. So there's this is what I'm trying to say in cultivation of plant medicine. Use it wisely, and then use the intention behind it if you do choose to do so, because it's the cultivation of the experience of the introspection and the connection of the divine and reflection that is coming back online. Because remember, in this reality, we tell the divine what it is, and it replicates itself by showing us then in vibration what that is in our physical parallel dimension that's happening. So the more that you elevate, the more that that connection takes place, the more that you are in a different type of intentional space of understanding and 0 point of nothingness, you will receive the divine vibration that you're looking for.
Hmm.
But you've got to tear all these patterns and all these layers, and all you have to understand yourself
Yeah.
to the depths. This is where we say not everybody's the same. Just because I've seen things and experienced that way from my soul's growth, everybody else has. But when it comes to seeing things peeled away of personal vibrations and things that become addictive, whether outside or inside,
Hmm.
because that inside is the emotion breeding the experience to show you once again. People are, they have to hear the word, they have to step into a certain, they have to have those things to be okay. And this is where the divine I've seen is really trying to peel away everything and every layer that is not of it, which is not true to the authenticity of
Hmm.
you,
Yep.
whether it be emotion, whether it be thought process, the way that you devote things to yourself, the way that you're devoting, the way that you're connecting to the divine. The spiritual addiction space has become where people, you know how, like, I got to see it not in my personal, well, I got to see it in my personal space with clients that came to me and students that came to me, where everybody got on this addictive bandwagon is that they had to know their spiritual abilities.
Yeah.
They had to know them, and they had to know them, and they had to know what they could do, and they had to know. And I'm like, with great power comes great response. Um, Number one, and I'm an activator. So if people come to me, they get activated, meaning I activate those abilities, right? When those things happen. So when I activate those things and I tell these people how they're doing these things to make the connection in a human way versus the spiritual way, those things open up quickly.
Hmm.
And then I could see how people got addicted, where they were constantly looking for that space, or to recreate that energy, or to recreate that desire, but in fact they were merely pushing the ability away because they wanted it so badly. And that
Yes.
became another spiritual addiction space,
Yep.
is because the natural vibration of elevation, when you, as a mentor and as somebody that people look up to, and I'm sure you understand this too, when you are that person being put in front of people, you don't fuck with nobody's free will.
No.
That's the shamanic aspect as well. You lead, you handhold, you help them through the scenario, which is, yes, you can see things ahead of them, things what's going on, but you give them the overall experience of the opportunity. Like a lot of people that came to me for help and for healing and for mentorship, they'd be very hesitant to talk to me about medications that they were on.
Yeah.
And I saw this as a representation, and it really hurt my heart, because there were other people in the spiritual community that told them that they weren't going to be able to connect, they weren't going to be able to raise their vibration because of mental medications that they were on. And that was one of the biggest disgraces of falsitivities that I saw being put on humanity. because the divine is going to naturally get wherever the divine needs to get, and your level of spiritual involvement is going to happen naturally. There were many people that I mentored that came to me when they were on medication, and then by the time that they were done with their elevation, they were talking to their doctors about tapering off the medication because their body had become more imbalanced or homeostasis, right?
Right.
But I could see how that became another addiction for people in their gifts and their talents and their abilities and their skills. They had to know that space. They had to know what that was. And then there was this fear space taking over that that wasn't going to happen for them because of medications that they were on. So then it was like another addiction phase that they were hitting, um, in a different double dynamic that they were going through. So you can see just how it has hit the spiritual community. People don't even necessarily realize the distortion of what they're getting into, and especially with Saturn and Neptune and Pisces right now, it's big to pay attention to the patterns, and the patterns may be coming back around to show people maybe where they have came from. But it's happening, if it's happening to you on a where you're just getting intuitive vision, right, or feeling or vibration, if it's happening on a physical level, it's because you're repeating a karmic cycle. If it's being shown to you in a vibration of an energy, right, and you're getting visions or cultivations, it's because the divine is showing you where you were in patternization
Mm-hmm.
versus where you are now. It's a temptation. It's a temptation to fall into the emotional energy of that vibration. And I know my water signs have been playing like fucking hell and havoc to get through this space because the emotional vibration wants to carry them away into another spiritual
Mm-hmm.
addiction space where they are going back to the emotional space of some type of process and phase which they've already been through, but the divine is trying to show them in a different way. It's the experience is not happening to you this time on a physical dynamic, it's happening on a spiritual dynamic. We're showing you the energy of it. That person's coming up again in your head, in your heart, and the vibration to show you where you were to where you are now, especially with Saturn and Uranus, all these beautiful planets playing at play. So pay attention to the entanglement, the distractions, the distortions. The best way, um, when it's not all bad that I beat the crap out of myself and came into a very deep understanding of myself. If I wouldn't have done what I did at the age of 22, 23, I would have never been able to help others get out of the trenches of that phase. And so I understand now why I had to put such high expectations on myself, why I had to uncover myself in those ways for my own personal soul growth and vibration to understand myself. Um, for God's sakes, I even get addicted to cuddles with my husband. Okay. Like, I'm like, whoa, this is too much. I'm like, too much, too much. I'm procrastinating now because I'm cuddling with you too much. Now I'm so aware because another one of my things was procrastination. And I had to learn though too that that's how the enemy was playing upon me. A lot of this is so spiritual we don't even realize that the enemy is using those spiritual things in an addictive way against us. And I'm like, whoa, I'm procrastinating too much again.
Yep.
Okay, it's been 15 minutes. I gotta go. I'm done. And I'm like, it's too much of a good thing. I'm so self-aware now. It's not even funny, man. In the understanding of that vibration. So I know that in a space of learning and growth, there are many different things that I can get entangled with if I choose to go.
Yep.
But that's part of the divine obedience of when we feel that, hey, 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 too much, not wrong way, that we're out of touch. We're out of touch. Procrastination was one of my addiction spaces. I would always tell myself I would do it later, knowing damn well I wasn't going to do it
Yep.
later.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
Knowing damn well I wasn't going to do it later.
Yep.
Damn well.
Absolutely.
Damn well I wasn't going to do it later.
Yep.
110%, I'd be like, oh, I'll do it later.
Yep.
You fucking liar. I was addicted to lying. I I was a habitual liar as a little kid, and I didn't even know why. Like, I don't even know where I learned it from as a little kid. Like, at the age of 10 years old, 11, lying about the stupidest things. Did you leave the fridge open? No. Like, it was just fucking automatic. So I had to realize how that became another addiction within myself. Of it was habitual. I didn't even have no mind or no thought about it. The same thing when I would say things like, a long time ago, my husband had to point something out to me, and I had to eat my own crow. And he goes, "Honey, don't you think you should stop saying that?" And I was like, "Saying what?" And he's like, "When you drop something, it could be a hair tie. It could be you trip over something. It could be the kid said something. You go, oh, fuck my life." And I go, yeah. And he goes, "Don't you think that that's not a good thing to say?" And I'm like, what a
Oh.
realization. And I was like, you're right. I didn't even realize how that became a patternization of behavior for me that became another layer of distortion of an addiction.
Mhm.
I was addicted to saying certain things at certain times
Yes.
because of the patternization. And so I had to train myself. It took me 3 weeks. I was proud of myself. It took me 3 weeks to stop saying that. The
Sometimes,
first few
yep.
times, I sounded like Sandra Bullock from The Heat at the end when she's like, "Oh, just fuck," like, because parts of it would come out, and I'd be like, "Oh," and it was, and it took me about 3 weeks to break that patternization, but I realized how it was just another distorted layer that had become an addictive behavior
Mhm.
that I didn't realize. I mean, for God's sakes, when I looked down to it at the bare minimum of things, I was addicted to brushing my teeth a certain way.
Yeah, that's why you say do it different, do things differently each day.
Do it
Uh huh.
differently.
Yeah.
It was huge. It was huge. I was so good too at being the intrusion upon myself for my own abuse, bro. And that became an addiction within itself. Like, I was like, oh, well, it must be my fault. There must be a problem with me. I did this. What did I do? It must have been a past life. Oh, yeah, fuck my life. All right. Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, it became such a narrative,
Uh huh.
you know, 8 to 10 years ago for
Yeah.
me, that's the paradigm that I was living in. So for me to, I got sober in 2012. And then it was really around 2000 and, I want to tell you 2017, 16, 17, that I started to see these things in a different way, because coming from the space of Bill W., I just knew that there was a deeper layer to things, and I knew that there was more than what they portrayed in the spiritual experience of things. So I started asking, and I started to go back into things very spiritual, but I didn't realize how even that paradigm of things had had told me for so long, for so many years, that I was the problem. So it reiterated that I was the
Mhm.
problem. The fourth step phase, right? And when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. I was fucking saying sorry for shit that wasn't even my
Mhm.
fault.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, that became another that's how the ego is so cunning, baffling, and powerful, as it was working against me in addictive behavior way, in a different way. So in that play of that understanding, in that way, you're understanding the matrix is just the mind, which is a replication of outside of the mind that's intertwined. And in your own personal experience, the deliverance of the labels or the energy that we place ourselves in distortion and fables is where we come into connection of all things. And I remember when the divine was speaking to me probably about 3 months ago, when it was about the becoming. You were in your becoming, and it was a collective message here with the becoming. Like, it was Jesus of the Christ. And so he was in a becoming phase, and you were in the space of being, when you understand and can connect to the energetic universal demand of flow and frequency of 0 point and being,
Mhm.
and have removed all of those things, it's very freeing in your own vibration in deliverance. So it's been a beautiful conversation with you,
Thank you.
and this time of opening these things up to a higher space and a higher mind. And um where is it that you personally see, because I know that you really work with people in patternization and addictive behavior and repatternizing the mind and doing physical things. So where are you headed with that vibration? Are you opening up space, soon for people to, cultivate towards you or vibrate towards you now that you're on a different phase and a different level of those things?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I'll be opening that space up here shortly.
Okay, beautiful. No, I just wanted to ask because that's what they were showing me, is that you were cultivating this space for to really work with the deeper layers of the trauma and the synchronicities of the patternization to help people understand their vibration of what they're doing in pattern. It's always those loops, right? It's the weak link. And people are repeating cycles again and again and again.
Oh, yes,
And if you can
breaking
help
news.
people break the cycles and deliver themselves from the bondage, to know thyself, is a huge gift
It is. Yes, it is.
to be a part of
Yes.
that shift. So thank you, Miss Megan,
Thank
for
you.
being here with me. And where can people find you or get in contact with you if you don't mind?
I am on TikTok, which is Rainbow Warrior Healing 23 right
Okay.
now, and then YouTube. It's just under
Okay.
it's Rainbow
What's
Warrior
your
Healing,
email?
Rainbow Warrior Healing
Okay. What's
23
your
at
email
Gmail.
at Gmail? Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
today, and thank you for cultivating this space with me. Take care of
Thank you very
yourself, and
much.
I'll be in contact soon. I appreciate you. All
Bye,
right.
guys.
Bye,
Thank
sweetheart.
you.
Mwah.